Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Lovesick Podcast. I'm your host, Dorothea.
And I'm Jada.
I'm Michael.
And today we have a fabulous guest from my hometown, Maryland. But I want to ask our viewers and listeners a question first before I introduce her. I would like to know how many of our viewers and listeners ever filed for disability and was denied? I would like to know that. But guess what? Our guest today will give us the information that we need to solve at least some of our problems. And I have attorney Tracey Pate from the Disability Associates LLC, correct?
That's correct.
And she's joining us to answer those questions for our listeners and viewers. Welcome, Tracey, and thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I love what you all do. You help so many people, and I'm just happy to sort of be a cog in that wheel.
and this is great because we can try to help as many people as we can and just give them some direction and hopefully some resolution. But here's the first thing that I would love to ask you and just kind of jump into the question.
Sure, let's do it.
I want to know first, what is Social Security Administration definition of disability?
That's a great question. So the definition is an individual needs to have a physical and or mental or a combination impairment that prevents that individual from being able to basically work on a full-time basis. Not only can they not do their past work, but they can't do any job. That impairment has to have lasted or be expected to last for at least 12 months in order to be eligible. So basically what that means is if you're diagnosed with something, it's going to be long term. Your doctors have said this is something you're going to be dealing with for a long while. I recommend that you stop working. You don't want to wait a year to file, okay? Mm-hmm. Because basically, at this point, you've met the criteria that your impairment is expected to last for at least 1 year. Okay. So that's really important because I'm sure our listeners, it's well known that this is a complex, lengthy process. And the sooner you can get your application filed, the better.
Wow. Now, with that being said, can you explain what type of documentation that people would need to actually support their claim that they're filing?
Yes. And I'll start that by telling you, and this is good for everyone. You want to go on Social Security's website, which you can find that at ssa.gov. And on that website, you can create your own personal account. And that account tells you everything about your work history. You can look at your earnings record. You can look at your benefits calculators, like if you become disabled, what your monthly benefit will be. If you decide to retire at various different ages, what your retirement benefit will be. Also on that website, there is a list of documentation that you need to provide in order to file the application, okay? But basically, the application is simply information gathering. So there's no real, advocacy or legal argument that you need to include in there. You're basically giving them your information, your personal information, such as your social security number, your date of birth, your address, all of that. Your medical information. And it's not your job to obtain all of your medical records because that would just be overwhelming. Social Security gathers those records. However, it's important to list all of your doctors, their addresses, their phone numbers, how long you've been treating with them, because Social Security's information is only as good as what you're giving them. So if there's an important doctor and that you leave that person out of the application, they're not going to know about it. So you also want to, if you have also filed a claim for workers' comp, there is an offset provision in the law where sometimes your Social Security benefits are reduced. So you want to provide any workers' comp awards, anything like that. And then your vocational history. And again, they look back 5 years and they want to know the jobs that you have done in the past 5 years. So that's essentially what you need to gather in the beginning. Also, it's important to know that, it is overwhelming. The application does take a while, but there's a benefit to being as thorough as possible, obviously, because you have a higher chance of being approved.
Right.
What for someone who's seeking out your expertise, like what might I come to you for, as far as help with the disability or Social Security? Like what might for the person listening, the people listening, what do we come to you for?
Okay, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So most of the time you come to me because you have done everything you're supposed to do, you filed your application, and Social Security denied you. Okay. That's usually when I get the call. All right. And then what I generally do, I take a good history. Regardless of diagnosis, everyone's situation's different. And I start out by giving you an honest evaluation of whether I believe it's a case that can be won. If I believe it is, I then you are like, hey, I'd like to hire you. What's your fee? I go over my fee structure, and people are unaware that there are no upfront costs to hire a disability attorney. Social Security certainly doesn't volunteer the information, but there are no upfront costs. And the fee is actually set by Social Security, okay? It's a contingency fee. So what that means is I only get a fee if I win your case. If we lose, there's no fee. And the fee comes out of past due benefits, okay? And it cannot exceed 25% of any past due benefits. And there's also a statutory fee cap. So right now, the fee is the lesser of 25% of whatever the past due benefits are, or $7,200. So let's just say your case takes years and years to finally get through the process, and you've accrued a large past due benefit award. Our fees are capped at a certain amount. So, and then, I think clients will say they just love to know that there's someone in their corner advocating for them at that point, pointing them in the right direction. I was thinking it's sort of an analogy, like, you don't want to get on a plane without a pilot. Like, the pilot sort of guides you from one point to another, gets you through the turbulence, and safely lands you. It's the same situation, in my opinion, with Social Security disability law, because it's very complicated. And just to be able to pick up the phone and talk to your lawyer and just, be calmed by, okay, everything that's happening is normal. Your case is where it needs to be. And just being in constant communication is important. And obviously a lawyer knows the law, right? So that, that's important. So you want someone who's experienced. I personally think you want someone who specializes in this type of law. I think you're better served by someone who only does Social Security disability work. Because if you go to a firm that does a little bit of everything, I feel like you can sort of get lost in the
Mhm.
shuffle a little bit.
What drew you to this? What made this your passion? Because I think it's such a beautiful area, but I'm curious what drew you this way.
Oh my gosh. I've been doing this since 1992 for 30
Wow.
years. And I just love helping people.
Mhm.
And I started out in a small firm that did a lot of different things, car accidents, criminal defense, family law. And I'm glad that I did because I got to see many different areas of practice, but they also did Social Security disability. And it's something that for me always stuck. Um, and it just I am so passionate about this because again, I love serving people. And I feel like I think I'm 3/4 social worker and 1/4 attorney in my heart. So this gives me an opportunity to kind of combine those two fields and help people.
Love that.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
When someone hires someone like yourself,
Right.
what are the chances of them actually winning? Like, is there a percentile of you you representing someone that filed versus them filing for themselves? And what is that like in real world? Like, how are your chances of actually getting accepted? In a
In real world terms, people
Yes,
ask me this question all the time.
yes.
And I tell my clients that if I didn't believe in your case and if I didn't think I could win your case, I would not take your case because I would not be in business. As much as I would love to help you, I need to pay my staff, I need to keep the lights on.
Mhm.
So if I take your case, that means we've got a really good chance of winning. I hate to say percentages, but I'm going to go with 70 to 80%.
Wow, that's
I
pretty
can
high.
tell you the the typical approval rating, and this is represented and unrepresented, okay? At the initial level, the approval rating is about 35%,
Ooh.
okay? So your chance of denial's high. And this is where I come alongside the client and I'm like, don't give up. This is a marathon, not a sprint, right? The second appeal level, it's an even lower approval rating. That's a reconsideration level. The third appeal level is as the hearing level where you actually appear before a judge and present your case. That's where you have the best chance of being approved. And for my clients, that's where we have the most success.
Right.
But a lot of it is just having the patience and the wherewithal to get to that point because the backlog is huge. It takes a long time to get to that point. And I do have cases that are approved at the initial and reconsideration level, but I can promise you that I will do everything I can to get you approved earlier. But if we're talking percentages, that's sort of where
Yeah,
it lies.
pretty interesting.
And when people come to you, before they come to you, or when they come to you, what are some of the reasons, the common reasons that their paperwork or things are getting denied?
So a lot of times it depends on the impairment. Okay. So someone may have been diagnosed with breast cancer. Okay. And they contact me and they're going through treatment and it looks like they're going to have a full resolution and it's going to be within that 12-month period. And they're like, am I eligible? I'm like, probably not, because you're not going to meet the duration requirement. right? So remember that your impairment needs to be have lasted or expected to last for at least 1 year. Okay. Or I'll have someone call and they're a welder, all right, and they've hurt their back and they can't go back to welding. And I'll say, well, could you do a lighter type job? For example, could you be, say, an information clerk in an office building where all you're doing is checking IDs and you can sit when you want, you can stand when you want, you wouldn't have any lifting, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I could probably do that. So that's a pretty common reason too. Or a lot of times people will call and they're still working, and you can't be working. You can't be working at levels that Social Security considers substantial, meaning full-time. You can, if you're doing some part-time work, if you're keeping your income under, I think the current rate is $1,500 a month pre-tax, then you still can apply. But even keeping your income under that threshold, your doctor still needs to say, you are only able to do part-time work, right? It's not enough to just keep your wages low. We have to marry the two. Your physician needs to be on board that, yeah, you should not be working more than 10 hours a week.
Tracey, once someone hires you to represent them, how long is the actual process? Like, does it take years to get approved, or does it, take months?
It can take years. In some cases, it can take months. Rarely does it take less than a year. And a lot of that is just because, it's a giant government bureaucracy that is not properly staffed. Like I said, I've been doing this for 30 years, gone through many different administrations, and the backlog has always been a major problem. And with COVID, it made it worse because a lot of people who were eligible to retire went ahead and retired from Social Security. So they're working with a skeleton crew. Our new commissioner, Martin O'Malley, has actually been doing a lot of great things, seemingly pretty quickly, to draw down the backlog. And we are seeing some glimpses that, hey, this is good. He's really addressing staffing and things like that. But yeah, every case is different. If we had to say average, I'm usually with a client for probably 18 months to 2 years.
Wow. Now, do they get back money from, like, when you actually start the case for them to file? If they win, do they get all of that money from the date you guys file until the actual date that they were approved? Or does it?
So yes and no. Social Security can find them disabled at any date. Even if we allege a particular onset date, meaning the date the person became disabled and unable to work, Social Security can decide that, well, hey, we think the medical evidence wasn't strong enough until we sent them to our doctor, right? So they can push that onset forward. But again, all these things are appealable. And that's where it really does help to have an attorney, because otherwise you don't know, because Social Security doesn't volunteer this favorable information, basically.
Right.
How do you prepare your clients for, like, a hearing?
So one thing I do is I make sure that we have all the updated medical records. That's super, super important. I'm actually able to access, once my retainer paperwork is submitted with Social Security, I'm able to access the electronic file. So I'm able to see all the medical records that are already there. I communicate with my client. I ask the client, well, what other office visits have you had? What other, diagnostic studies? And then so we know going before this judge, all of the medical records will be there because that's so important. Another thing I do is I want to get some good medical opinions from treating doctors, okay? Because up until the hearing, it's basically been a rubber stamp at Social Security saying, you don't check these boxes. So I want to get their doctors to come on, to be on the team. And I want to hear what their doctors have to say about how the person's limitations affect their ability to work and things like that. So that's another thing. I also have long talks with them about, the importance of credibility. You want to be honest, because if you're not, it's just not going to go well, because chances are, you might say something, but it's in the medical records where it wasn't accurate, for example. So it just never pays to sort of stretch the truth thinking it's going to help your case. We also do practice hearings. We do like mock hearings, which helps with, just helps them prepare for what types of questions are going to be asked. And I give them an idea of what sort of oral arguments I'm going to make at the hearing, and whether I'm going to submit any written briefs, things like that. But those are the types of things that I do.
What are the things you wish people knew before they came to you? And what is the thing, if you could tell somebody, like, you should come, if you're at this point, you should come now, like, don't wait?
So I would tell them the most important thing, I think, is if they're going to file an initial application on their own, they need to understand the basic information that's going to be needed for that to file a good application. That can be found on that website. So I tell everybody, open up that account. It's good for anyone, whether it's good for all of us. I mean, I opened one because you want to make sure your earnings record represents, what you believe it should over all these years of working. So it's a great snapshot. And in this age of identity theft, it's kind of good to
Right.
really know what's going on behind the scenes. So as opposed to just sort of sitting down and start typing out the application, really put some thought into it. Some lawyers get involved right at the application stage. I do sometimes. And the reason I say that is if a person is just now out of work, if they just stopped working in June and they want to file an application, oftentimes what happens is 6 months later, they decide to go back to work. So I like to wait until a client has done the application and then has either been denied or it's been a long enough period of time, maybe around 9 months, where it's looking like, your doctor is saying that there's no way you're going to be able to return to work, and get involved at that time. But I also get lots of calls, and consultations are free. So anyone going through this process should never hesitate to call. And I'm pretty sure that would be the case with any disability lawyer. It should be. So questions, things like that. I have a lot of clients who call, I give them information and they're like, hey, is it okay if I call you back if I get denied? And I'm like, absolutely. So, those are the main things I think it's important for people to know.
I mean, I know a lot of patients who file on their own.
Right.
And everyone that I know, they've been denied. Like they never
Right.
got it on their own. And they had to end up getting an attorney because they just could not. They were denied 2 and 3 times.
I know.
Over and over until it was just like, okay, I can't take it anymore. and they hire someone, and then all of a sudden they get approved, you know?
Right. Right. I do think, I mean, technically, I don't know that there's been any surveys done, but I think that it definitely helps
Mm-hmm.
to obtain representation.
Right.
And for the simple fact of, if if you're operating under the assumption that you think you have a really good case, a lawyer might tell you that actually, I don't think you have a case you can win, and here's why. And so it helps to have that conversation as well.
Right. Because I think people, they just assume because of the fact that they can just file for it, that they'll get it. But like you said in the beginning, the disability rules, like, what is considered that. And a lot of people don't know that. So when they're putting all this
Right.
information and filing, and they're not even in the ballpark of what Social Security disability is looking at.
It's a very strict criteria.
Mm-hmm.
And Social Security doesn't just look at diagnosis. Okay, that's really important, because I do think people think, oh my gosh, I have this diagnosis, I'm going to file and get
Yes.
approved. They look at symptoms. How does the diagnosis affect your ability to function on a day-to-day basis? What symptoms do you have that keep you from being able to work on a full-time basis? So it's not just the diagnosis, it's the limitations and the symptoms that come along with that. And that's something that I think a lot of people aren't aware of.
And you're right, because I've had people say, well, I have this diagnosis and I have that. So they're assuming that because of that, like you said, not knowing all the facts, that they can just file and it gets approved.
Now, there are some conditions, and these conditions fall under the compassionate allowance provisions of Social Security law. And what that means is these conditions are so severe that all you need to do is file an application, you're going to get approved. A stage 4 cancer, pretty obvious, serious conditions like, ALS, Alzheimer's, those kinds of things. So that those, yes, but other, degenerative disc disease of the spine, things like that, just having it isn't enough.
Right. Now, Tracey, can you represent people in other states or just Maryland?
I can actually. Yep, I can. It's great because Social Security allows individuals to or attorneys to represent clients in any state. In fact, you don't need to be an attorney to represent someone at a Social Security case.
Oh, wow.
There are non-attorney representatives that also represent people. Now, I don't think that is the best way to go, in my opinion, and I won't get into all the reasons why, but yes, I am able to represent clients everywhere. And what's great is there are multiple options for appearing at a hearing. You can appear in person, but believe it or not, few people want to do that anymore since COVID. We can appear virtually by a Microsoft Teams platform, which is like just like Zoom, and we can also appear by telephone. So that's really made it easy to represent clients all over.
Wow.
And most of our communication is by email, phone. There's no real need for in-person meetings. I am always available. I tell everyone, but they're like, oh, we don't need to see you. We just, not
What's
that
probably important.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
When you're talking about disability, it may be a mobility or an access.
100%.
Right? So like
Absolutely.
this is a really important element.
Absolutely. You're already not feeling well. So who wants to leave the house and go meet go to court or meet with a lawyer.
No,
Well,
this is really good for our listeners and viewers, because if someone is actually going through that right now
Mhm.
and they actually need to seek an attorney, it's really good information to know that you can represent them no matter where they are in the state.
Absolutely.
So this is
Absolutely.
really good information.
Yep. Yep.
yeah, probably not to go it alone, because this is one of those things like if I went to go file disability,
Mhm.
this would be my first time. I
Right.
only know my case, right? Or I may know the case of a loved one, in the case of maybe helping a parent or a family member. You've seen countless cases. I don't even want to guess how many cases, right? So
Yes.
you'll know what they look like, some of the
Right.
pitfalls, some of the problems, some of the challenges, some of the things that Social Security and Disability Department looks at, and some of the things where they're like, yeah, that doesn't qualify.
Absolutely. Yep. That is so true. You never want to go this alone.
Right.
And it doesn't it costs you nothing up front, and it just I think it's important to have an advocate by your side through the process, because the process itself is physically and mentally draining, and
Right.
there's no reason to have to go it alone.
And I can imagine you practicing for over 30 years. You can almost look at any case and tell right off the bat if
Yes.
it or not. And
I
how much
can.
more you need to do that.
Yes, I can. I can. And it's very true. And experience helps. I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I can tell you I do have the benefit of experience.
Right, right. And that's good when it comes to high profile cases like this, because
Absolutely.
it's been proven, and they wouldn't have attorneys for Social Security benefits if it wasn't needed,
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
there's a need, of course. It's just that people need to take advantage of that. And I think a lot of it really it really boils down to just the education that people don't know how to go about applying and what they really need to win a case. And
You're
that's why
so
we need
right.
attorneys like you
Yeah,
to
and that's why your podcast is phenomenal. Just
Oh,
getting the word out there and educating the public, and it's so important.
thank you.
Because it's not readily available. The information's not readily available. So you guys are doing a wonderful thing.
Thanks, Tracey.
Thank you. Well, you did give us a lot of information,
Yes.
because it actually, when someone throws out the word attorney, it's
Yes.
almost like, I don't know if I have the money to do this, or I can,
Yes.
and it becomes a thing where you're like, maybe this is not what I do, or maybe I have to try it myself, or give up, or so I think you put a lot of good messages out there that hopefully will encourage more people to go out and
Right.
seek your expertise.
I hope so.
Yeah, they won't be fearful, because I think that's another word that people are thinking, like Jada just said, oh no, attorney, I don't have money for that, but
Right.
you just broke that down for them
Yep.
to let them know they don't pay anything until you win the case.
Exactly.
And you're not.
And even then, right. And even then, they already know what the maximum limit is, right?
Right.
So even if their case is one that unfortunately takes a long time, they know that, it's capped. The lawyer's not gonna receive more than what the statutory max is. So yeah.
And we encourage people to take the advantage of the free consultation too, because that's where you're gonna get all the initial information.
Of course, absolutely. It's a great kind of free gift that we give.
Which is nice, because
do you have a favorite case? I know you can't give us the absolute specifics of, but like, do you have a case where you're like, that's why I love what I do?
Every day, I'm not kidding. Every day when I go on, I see my, I'm able to, the hearing office allows us to check the status of all our decisions. And when I go online and I see fully favorable, I like want to have a small party, and I called that client and I was like, we won. It's definitely a team effort, and it is like we've journeyed together, and it's so rewarding. And while it certainly isn't going to cure the person, it just gives them some peace of mind that they have a way to, take care of their family, and they now get medical insurance and all of those things. So yeah, I do not one necessarily sticks out, but it's sort of an everyday thing, and that's just what keeps me enthusiastic. And my kids, I have adult daughters, and they're like, "Mom, when are you going to retire? And if we have grandkids?" And I was like, "I don't know," because I love what I do, right?
Right. Yeah.
You're lucky when you can say that.
That's right. And that takes a special person, and that's what actually help people. Like you say, you love what you do, and then
Mhm.
people feel very comfortable with you because they
Right.
know that you care about them.
Yes.
And
And
you're
I
not
think
just doing this just to, for the accolades. You're doing this because you really want to help them.
absolutely, absolutely. And that's why I went into this work.
There you go.
Mhm.
So, Tracey, how can everyone that's listening that needs your assistance, how can they get in contact with you?
Oh my goodness. Well, a couple ways. I can give you our phone number.
Mhm.
It's 410-686-2227. And then also there's a lot of great information on our website, which is www.disabilityassociates.com. And from the website, you can actually fill out a contact form, which comes directly to my inbox. So that's probably the best way. And then, you can research my firm. You can look at my reviews. There are lots of people out there, lots of lawyers that do this work. And, it's important to do your research.
Yeah.
So we do have a Facebook page, Disability Associates, and Instagram, but the website is really where it's at. We have a lot of articles, a lot of blogs, lots of information. Having been in business for 30 years, word of mouth pretty much brings me
Right.
everything
Because
that we
social
need.
media wasn't even a thing back then. So
Exactly.
obviously it works for you for sure.
Exactly.
I want to thank you so much for taking out time of your busy schedule. And I also want to thank Sharon Christie because I met her years ago on my show, Let's Talk Sarcoidosis. And she was a guest, a phenomenal guest. And her recommending you, it just made our day because we wanted to share some type of expertise in regards to disability, and you've done it for us.
Well, I really appreciate it. It's been an honor, and you guys are just a blessing to all your listeners.
Thank
you so
you,
much.
Tracy. Have a great day. And
Okay.
we really do appreciate it. You have a fabulous day. And thank you so much for enlightening our listeners.
Absolutely. You too.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
again. All right. Bye.